Ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying my videos, please click the like button. It is the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me. I would be very grateful to you. Sleep is deadly in this town. Read why. Scary story published by Scare Fiction. Read 4 by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1. Arrival. Amelia Ross stepped off the bus and took in the view of Meadowbrook. The town looked like a postcard, with its charming streets, old-fashioned storefronts, and the rolling hills that framed it. But beneath the picturesque surface, Amelia sensed something was very wrong. She adjusted her bag, feeling the weight of her camera and notepad, and walked towards the town center. Her editor's words echoed in her mind. Find out why people are dying in their sleep. We need answers. The first person she approached was an elderly man sweeping the sidewalk outside a general store. Excuse me, sir. I'm Amelia Ross, an investigative journalist. Do you have a moment to talk about the recent deaths in town? The man paused, his eyes widening with fear. Ain't much to say. Folks go to bed and don't wake up. Best not to dwell on it, he muttered, quickly retreating inside. Amelia sighed and moved on, determined to find someone willing to speak. She stopped by a cafe, where the aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the tense whispers of patrons. She approached the counter, where a young barista was wiping down the surface. Hi, I'm Amelia Ross. I'm writing about the recent events here. Do you know anything about what's happening? The barista's hands trembled as she set down the cloth. People are scared. My aunt died last week. She was healthy, just gone. No one knows why. Do you think it's something in the air, the water? Amelia pressed. The barista shook her head. It's not that. People say it's a curse, something old and evil. You should leave before it gets you too. As Amelia left the cafe, she felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. Fear was palpable in Meadowbrook, and it was clear the townspeople were terrified to sleep. She needed to dig deeper, but for now, the town remained tight-lipped, haunted by an invisible menace. Chapter 2. The First Night. As dusk settled over Meadowbrook, Amelia checked into the only bed and breakfast in town. The elderly owner, Mrs. Carter, handed her a worn key. Room 3, dear. Try to get some rest, she said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Amelia unpacked her things, the room's creaky floorboards and antique furniture adding to the unease she felt. She tried to shake off the barista's warning, but the oppressive atmosphere was inescapable. Determined to gather her thoughts, she opened her laptop to review her notes. The clock ticked loudly in the silence, each minute dragging on. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. Amelia decided to take a walk around the inn to clear her mind. As she stepped into the dimly lit hallway, she heard a faint, haunting melody. It sounded like an old lullaby, the kind meant to soothe, but now felt sinister. She followed the sound, but it vanished as quickly as it had started. Shaking her head, she returned to her room, her nerves on edge. She lay in bed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for sleep to claim her. But rest didn't come easily. Suddenly, a loud thud jolted her upright. Heart pounding, she crept to the window and peered out. The streets were empty, but the sense of being watched lingered. The clock read 3:32 a.m. A minute later, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. Amelia's breath caught. She rushed to the window again, seeing lights flicker on in the neighboring houses. People emerged from their homes, huddling together, their faces etched with fear. It was then she realized the scream had come from directly across the street. Grabbing her notepad and camera, she dashed out of her room and down the stairs. By the time she reached the house, a small crowd had gathered. Amelia pushed through, her journalistic instincts taking over. "Who was it?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Mrs. Thompson," a man replied, his voice trembling. "She went to bed early. We found her at exactly 3:33. Amelia's blood ran cold. Another death, just as the clock struck 3:33 a.m. The pattern was undeniable, and the town's terror was palpable. She knew she had to uncover the truth before she, too, became a victim of Meadowbrook's deadly nights. Chapter 3: The Sleepwalkers. The morning sun did little to chase away the chill of the previous night. Amelia sipped her coffee in the bed and breakfast's dining room, her mind racing with questions. Mrs. Carter's concerned gaze followed her every move. "You should speak with Dr. Grant," she suggested, setting a plate of toast before Amelia. "He's been studying these occurrences." Amelia nodded, grateful for the lead. She headed to the small clinic on Main Street, where the waiting room was filled with anxious faces. After a short wait, she was ushered into Dr. Grant's office. Dr. Grant, a man in his early 50s with graying hair and a kind demeanor, greeted her warmly. "Miss Ross, I've heard about your investigation. I'm glad someone is taking this seriously." "Thank you, Dr. Grant. Can you tell me what you've discovered about these deaths?" Amelia asked, her pen poised over her notepad. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's baffling. There are no signs of trauma or illness. It's as if their bodies just shut down. But there's another phenomenon that concerns me: sleepwalking." "Sleepwalking?" Amelia's interest peaked. "Yes, several residents have started wandering in their sleep, often heading towards the same location, the old church ruins," he explained. "It's as if something is calling them." As if on cue, a nurse burst into the office. "Doctor, it's happening again. Mrs. Evans is sleepwalking." Dr. Grant and Amelia hurried to the examination room. Mrs. Evans, a woman in her 40s, was standing, her eyes closed, murmuring unintelligibly. Her movements were slow, almost trance-like. Amelia watched, her pulse quickening. "We need to wake her gently," Dr. Grant whispered, approaching Mrs. Evans carefully. But before he could reach her, Mrs. Evans' eyes snapped open. She screamed, a sound of pure terror, and collapsed. Amelia rushed to her side, helping Dr. Grant lift her onto the examination table. Mrs. Evans' eyes fluttered open, now filled with confusion. "What happened?" she asked weakly. "You were sleepwalking, Mary," Dr. Grant said gently. "Do you remember anything?" She shook her head, tears welling up. "I don't. But I felt drawn, like something was pulling me." Amelia's mind raced. The sleepwalking incidents, the deaths at 3:33 a.m., the old church ruins, pieces of a puzzle she was desperate to solve. Meadowbrook's secrets were deep and dark, and she was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. Chapter 4: Historical Clues. After the unsettling encounter with Mrs. Evans, Amelia needed answers. She made her way to the town library, a quaint, dusty building that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. The librarian, Mrs. Whitaker, greeted her with a wary smile. "I'm looking for any historical records about Meadowbrook, especially anything related to a woman named Ella Ra," Amelia explained. Mrs. Whitaker's eyes widened. "Elara, that name brings back old tales. Follow me." She led Amelia to a dimly lit corner where ancient tomes and fragile manuscripts lined the shelves. Amelia spent hours poring over the documents. She discovered that Elara had been a healer in the 1600s, falsely accused of witchcraft by fearful townsfolk. Before her execution, she cursed Meadowbrook, vowing that its residents would suffer in their sleep. One particularly weathered book caught Amelia's attention. Inside, She found detailed accounts of Alora's trial and execution. Scrawled in the margins were notes about a powerful artifact called the Dreamcatcher. According to the notes, this artifact had the power to protect against evil spirits, but was lost after Alara's death. Amelia's heart raced as she read further. The Dreamcatcher was said to be hidden in the old church ruins, the same place the sleepwalkers were drawn to. The pieces were starting to fit together. Could this artifact be the key to ending the curse? Mrs. Whitaker, do you know anything about the Dreamcatcher? Amelia asked, showing her the book. The librarian's face grew pale. It's a legend passed down through generations. Some believe it's a myth, but others swear it exists. It's said to be hidden in the church ruins, but no one has found it. Amelia thanked Mrs. Whitaker and hurried out of the library, clutching the book tightly. She needed to see the church ruins for herself. If the Dreamcatcher was real, it might be the only way to save the town from its deadly curse. As she walked through the now familiar streets, Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fear in the eyes of Meadowbrook's residents, the eerie occurrences, and the deaths all pointed to one place. The old church ruins awaited, holding the key to the town's salvation or its doom. Determined, Amelia prepared for her visit to the ruins. She would find the Dreamcatcher, uncover the truth behind Alara's curse, and put an end to the nightmare that haunted Meadowbrook. The clock was ticking, and the next 3:33 a.m. was only hours away. Chapter 5. Nightmares. As night fell, Amelia couldn't shake the unease that clung to her after her visit to the library. She prepared for bed, her mind swirling with thoughts of Alara, the curse, and the Dreamcatcher. She drifted into a restless sleep, her subconscious pulling her into a dark abyss. In her dream, she was standing in the old church ruins. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning flesh. She saw Alara, bound to a wooden stake, her eyes blazing with fury and sorrow. The townsfolk surrounded her, their faces twisted with fear and hatred. "You will all suffer." Alara's voice echoed through the night, a chilling promise that sent shivers down Amelia's spine. "Your descendants will pay for your sins." The scene shifted abruptly. Amelia found herself in a dense forest, following a path lit by a pale, ghostly light. She was drawn towards an ancient tree, its gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Hanging from one of the branches was the Dreamcatcher, its intricate web glowing faintly. She reached for it, but the ground beneath her feet gave way. She fell into darkness, the sensation of falling endless and terrifying. Whispers filled her ears, a cacophony of voices speaking of betrayal, pain, and vengeance. Amelia woke with a start, her heart pounding and her body drenched in sweat. The clock read 3:33 a.m. She glanced around her room, half expecting to see Alara's specter watching her. The dream had felt so real, too real. Her hands shook as she wiped the sweat from her forehead. The nightmares continued over the next few nights, each one more vivid and horrifying than the last. Alora's life played out before her eyes, her healing powers, the growing suspicion and fear of the townspeople, and finally, her brutal execution. Amelia's grip on reality began to slip. She'd wake in the middle of the night, unsure if she was still dreaming. During the day, shadows seemed to move just beyond her vision, and she constantly felt as if she was being watched. She couldn't shake the feeling that Alora's curse was creeping into her own mind, eroding her sanity. Determined to stay focused, Amelia pored over her notes and the old book she'd borrowed from the library. The nightmares, she realized, weren't just dreams, they were memories, echoes of the past trying to reveal something crucial. But as the lines between dream and reality blurred, she questioned her own sanity. Could she trust what she saw, what she felt? Or was the curse claiming her too? Desperation clawed at her, pushing her closer to the edge. She had to find the dream catcher and break the curse before it consumed her and everyone else in Meadowbrook. Chapter 6. The Rival. Amelia's nights were tormented by nightmares, and the days were consumed by her quest to uncover Meadowbrook's secrets. As she delved deeper into the town's history and the mystery of Alara's curse, a new challenge emerged. Mark Turner, a rival journalist with a flair for sensationalism. Amelia first encountered Mark at the town square, where he was holding court with a group of eager listeners. His booming voice and confident demeanor drew attention like a magnet. As she approached, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of irritation. "Amelia Ross, the fearless investigator," Mark exclaimed, flashing a grin that seemed more predatory than friendly. "What brings you to our little town?" Amelia forced a polite smile, though she felt anything but friendly towards Mark. "I'm here to uncover the truth behind the recent deaths," she replied evenly. "Ah, the deaths," Mark said, his tone dripping with melodrama. "Such a tragic story. But fear not, dear citizens. Mark Turner is here to shine a light on the darkness that plagues Meadowbrook." Amelia rolled her eyes, struggling to keep her composure. Mark's theatricality grated on her nerves, but she knew she had to stay focused on her mission. As they crossed paths more frequently, tension simmered between them like a brewing storm. Mark seemed determined to outdo Amelia at every turn, twisting the facts and sensationalizing the story for his own gain. He played to the townspeople's fears, stoking the flames of hysteria with his inflammatory rhetoric. Amelia fought to maintain her integrity, refusing to compromise the truth for the sake of sensational headlines. But Mark's influence was growing, and she knew she couldn't let him control the narrative. Their rivalry intensified as they raced to uncover the truth behind Alara's curse and the whereabouts of the Dreamcatcher. Each new discovery brought them closer to the heart of the mystery, but also drove a deeper wedge between them. Amidst the chaos and competition, Amelia remained steadfast in her determination to bring justice to Meadowbrook and lift the curse that had plagued the town for centuries. But as Mark's influence grew, she knew she would have to stay one step ahead if she wanted to succeed. Chapter 7. The Hidden Journal. As tension between Amelia and Mark reached its peak, Amelia's determination to uncover the truth burned brighter than ever. She knew she had to delve deeper into the heart of Meadowbrook's mystery, even if it meant confronting the source of the curse itself. With the old church ruins looming ominously in the distance, Amelia set out on a mission. She navigated through the overgrown path leading to the crumbling structure, her heart pounding with anticipation. Inside the dilapidated church, shadows danced in the dim light filtering through broken stained glass windows. Dust motes floated in the air as Amelia searched every nook and cranny, her senses alert for any sign of the elusive Dreamcatcher. Her search led her to a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, where she discovered a weathered journal. Its pages were yellowed with age, and the ink had faded, but the words were still legible. With trembling hands, Amelia began to read. Alara's journal was a chronicle of her life, her love, and her ultimate betrayal. As she turned page after page, she felt a connection to the woman who had suffered so unjustly, and then she stumbled upon the revelation that would change everything. Alara's restless spirit was indeed behind the curse that had plagued Meadowbrook for centuries. Fueled by anger and grief, she had unleashed her vengeance upon the descendants of those who had wronged her. But there was hope amidst the darkness. The journal contained clues about breaking the curse and locating the Dreamcatcher, the very artifact that could end Alara's torment and save the town from further suffering. Amelia's heart raced as she absorbed the weight of this discovery. She knew she held the key to Meadowbrook's salvation in her hands. But with Mark's relentless pursuit of the story and the town's growing hysteria, time was running out. Armed with newfound determination, Amelia vowed to follow the journal's clues to their end. She would confront the darkness that lurked within the old church and unearth the dream catcher before it was too late. Meadowbrook's fate and her own hung in the balance. Chapter 8: Desperation. With the revelation from Ilara's journal weighing heavily on her mind, Amelia knew time was of the essence. But as she emerged from the old church ruins, she was met with a scene of chaos and despair. The town of Meadowbrook was in the grip of panic. More deaths had occurred overnight, each one sending shockwaves of fear through the community. People gathered in small groups on street corners, their voices hushed in anxious whispers. Amelia felt the weight of their fear pressing down on her as she made her way through the town. She could see the desperation in their eyes, the sense of helplessness that pervaded every conversation. As she passed by, she caught snippets of conversation. "It's the curse," one person muttered. "We're all doomed," another lamented. The air was thick with uncertainty, and the once tight-knit community was unraveling before her eyes. But amidst the panic, there was something else brewing, a palpable hostility directed at Amelia. The townsfolk, desperate for answers, began to turn on her, blaming her for their plight. "You brought this curse upon us," one woman accused, her voice laced with venom. "You and your meddling." Amelia tried to reason with them, to explain that she was only trying to help. But her words fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the rising tide of anger and mistrust. She felt a sense of isolation creeping in, a loneliness that cut deeper than any physical wound. She had come to Meadowbrook with the best of intentions, but now she was seen as an outsider, a threat to be feared and hated. Despite the hostility, Amelia refused to give up. She knew she had to push forward, to find the dream catcher and put an end to the curse once and for all. But as the town descended further into chaos, she couldn't shake the feeling of desperation that gripped her heart. Clock was ticking, and with each passing moment, the darkness threatened to consume them all. Chapter 9: The Confrontation. Amelia's heart pounded with a mix of determination and trepidation as she made her way back to the old church ruins. She knew that time was running out, that the key to breaking the curse lay hidden somewhere within its crumbling walls. But she was not alone in her quest. As she approached the ruins, she saw a figure emerging from the shadows, a figure she recognized all too well. "Mark," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "What are you doing here?" Mark's expression was grim as he stepped forward, his eyes betraying a mixture of fear and determination. "I could ask you the same thing, Amelia. We both know what's at stake here. Their rivalry, once fueled by competition and ambition, now paled in comparison to the danger that loomed before them." Together, they entered the ruins, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. As they searched for the dream catcher, tension hung heavy in the air. The weight of their shared mission pressed down on them, each moment bringing them closer to the inevitable confrontation. And then they found it, the dream catcher, hidden away in a forgotten corner of the ruins. Its intricate design seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. But their victory was short-lived. As they reached for the artifact, a cold wind swept through the ruins, chilling them to the bone. And then she appeared, Illara, her spirit twisted with rage and despair. "You dare to disturb my rest," she hissed, her voice echoing off the ancient stone walls. "You'll pay for your insolence." Amelia and Mark stood their ground, their resolve unshaken. They knew that this was the moment they had been preparing for, the moment when they would face the source of Meadowbrook's curse head-on. With a final glance at each other, they braced themselves for the battle ahead. The clock struck 3:33 a.m., and as the world seemed to hold its breath, they prepared to confront Alara's malevolent spirit and break the curse once and for all. Chapter 10: The Choice. As Alara's malevolent spirit loomed before them, Amelia and Mark knew that the time for action had come. The dreamcatcher glowed faintly in their hands, its power pulsing with the weight of centuries. But breaking the curse would come at a cost neither of them had fully anticipated. As they stood in the ruins of the old church, facing down the embodiment of Alara's wrath, they realized that a sacrifice would be necessary to set Meadowbrook free. Amelia's mind raced as she considered their options. She knew that breaking the curse would require a life willingly given, a soul offered up to appease Alara's vengeful spirit. But who would make that sacrifice? In a moment of clarity, Amelia understood the gravity of their situation. She knew that Mark, despite their rivalry, was the only one who could make the ultimate sacrifice. He had faced the darkness with her, stood by her side in their quest for the truth. And now, he would give his life to save the town from the curse that had plagued it for centuries. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "I know what we have to do." Mark met her gaze, his expression resigned but determined. "I understand, Amelia. I'll do whatever it takes to end this." With a heavy heart, Amelia watched as Mark stepped forward, offering himself up to Alara's spirit. She could feel the weight of his sacrifice, the solemnity of the moment hanging in the air like a shroud. And then, in a flash of blinding light, Mark was gone. His sacrifice had broken the curse, freeing Meadowbrook from Alara's vengeful grip once and for all. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Amelia felt a sense of peace wash over her. Mark's sacrifice had saved the town, but it had also reminded her of the true power of sacrifice and selflessness. With a heavy heart and a renewed sense of purpose, Amelia vowed to honor Mark's memory by continuing to seek the truth, no matter the cost. And as she walked away from the ruins of the old church, she knew that Meadowbrook would never forget the sacrifice that had saved them all. Epilogue. Aftermath. With Mark's sacrifice, the curse that had gripped Meadowbrook for centuries was finally lifted. As the days passed, the town began to heal, the wounds of the past slowly fading into memory. Amelia watched from a distance, her heart heavy with the weight of all they had lost. But she knew that Mark's sacrifice had not been in vain. His memory lived on in the hearts of the townspeople, a testament to the power of selflessness and sacrifice. As life returned to normal in Meadowbrook, Amelia set pen to paper, determined to tell their story. She wrote of Alara's curse, of Mark's bravery, and of the town's resilience in the face of adversity. But as she wrote, she couldn't shake the feeling that Meadowbrook's story was far from over. Lingering questions remained unanswered, and a sense of unease hung in the air like a ghostly whisper. Despite the town's recovery, Amelia knew that some scars ran too deep to ever fully heal. Meadowbrook would always be haunted by its past, by the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. And yet, amidst the shadows, there was hope. Hope for a future free from the specter of Alara's curse, free from the fear that had held them captive for so long. As she finished writing, Amelia closed her notebook with a sense of finality. The story of Meadowbrook was now etched in ink, a reminder of the trials they had faced and the strength they had found in each other. And as she looked out over the town, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united in their determination to overcome whatever darkness threatened to engulf them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quiet streets of Meadowbrook. Amelia packed her bags. She knew it was time to leave, to move on from the town that had forever changed her. But as she turned to take one last look, a chill ran down her spine. In the fading light, she saw a lone crow perched on a nearby rooftop, its eyes watching her with a knowing gaze. And in that moment, she couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness that had once consumed Meadowbrook still lingered, waiting to strike again.